Welcome back to Society, the podcast, where high achieving women come to heal the hustle, rebuild self trust, and redefine success in a way that feels like freedom. I am your coach, Rashida McKenzie, and if you're here, it means that something from our first conversation stuck with you. Maybe a word, maybe a vibe, maybe just a truth that you couldn't get out of your head. You couldn't shake it. Something you heard. Maybe you've just started questioning the stories that you've been told about who you should be, how hard you should have to work, and what success is supposed to look like. So, if that is the case, then good. It means the unraveling has begun. Today, we are going to deep dive into the hustle versus flow dilemma. Anyway, I just had to. If you know, you know. We're going to talk about why we believe success only comes from struggle, why hustle culture is not the flex that we think it is, and how we can step into a life that actually flows, one that allows us to win without wearing ourselves out. Because, whew, I've been there. And I'm going to tell you that story in a second. But I want you to know that this idea of the hustle mindset is a trap. And if you don't bring awareness to it, what happens is we just end up in an endless cycle because at some point in your life, it worked for you, right? It allowed you to reap the benefits. There was rewards and validation and money that came with you working yourself to the bone, but we're done with that. Let me take you back by first sharing my story with you, and then we'll start to unravel where this originated from in the first place. So, there was a time in a season in my life when I was in what I call extreme hustle. I was on bed rest with my daughter for 22 weeks. Somebody say 22. 8 weeks of those were spent in the hospital. So while I was there, I remember searching for a meal prep service, laundry support, anything that I could find that would lighten my load because I was going to have to go back home and I wouldn't have round the clock nurses to make sure that I had what I needed. And I remember feeling really nervous about that. So, wanting to put some support in place before I went home from the hospital. But as I was looking, I couldn't find anything like that. There wasn't any services that met my needs. So I started writing out everything that I needed and created a business plan to help other moms on bed rest. Because I'm like, I know that I'm not the only person that needs this. So I just started writing things out. I was making phone calls, doing inquiries, right? I was passing that time on bed rest. But you know, things I was still working at the time. Things started getting closer to me going home and of course having this baby and so you I'm preparing for that as well. And I just started to set that to the side. Fast forward, I had a healthy baby and I was gearing up to go back to work and a week before I was supposed to go back, I was laid off. So I was like, okay. And I got a little severance too. So I felt like it was a sign to go ahead and start that business. So when my daughter was about 10 or 11 months old, I launched the business, but I didn't think about who was going to take these clients that were coming in. So it ended up being me. And in order to kind of prove the concept and make some money, in the meantime, I worked an overnight job at a hotel. Honestly, just rehatching, reliving this story makes me exhausted every time I tell it. I go into more detail in my book called Give Yourself Grace, Girl. In fact, let me just go on and read you a little passage from that time so you can really have a clear picture on what was going on. So this is the book, Give Yourself Grace, Girl. This story starts on page 16, but you're gonna want to go ahead and read that whole chapter. You're gonna want to go ahead and skim this. This is actually the first chapter. Um, After a typical evening of work at the hotel, I was on my way to a client. As I drove along the street belting Anita Baker's Angel, because that is my jam, at the top of my lungs, I danced with the steering wheel in my hands. This was one of the many tactics I used to stay awake during my commutes, along with a newfound caffeine addiction. When they created that, what's the slogan? People who run on Dunkin', that was me. It was literally my fuel. Not proud of that. This particular morning would prove to be anything but typical. I sat at an intersection waiting to make a left turn. An approaching car drove along in the opposite direction on this bi-directional road. It appeared that they weren't going to cross the intersection, but would turn off the road. However, the car continued straight along as I chose to make my turn, and then boom, I smashed my car right into the driver's side door. Stunned, I sat there in disbelief. I was just a block away from my client's house when this all took place. As I sat in my car with my bumper hanging off in the middle of the intersection, instinctively, I bypassed calling my insurance company and my husband, but instead, I picked up the phone and called the client. My client. That is crazy. I know, but I kept thinking about how not showing up or doing a no show would ruin my reputation. After all, I was just getting this business started. So I hung up the phone, laid my head on the steering wheel, and I cried. Whew, okay. Here's the thing. When I look back, I thought that I was just doing what needed to be done. But that's exactly how I overlooked that I was beyond burnout. It had been disguised as ambition. I was tired, but we're taught you just keep pushing, you keep going. Have you ever started to resent what you've built? Like it's everything that you asked for, but something just feels off. That's the first clue. But back then, I didn't have the words or the terminology to put to what I was feeling. And I didn't want to complain. So I just thought, this is the price you pay in order to make it. And I put an emphasis on it because a lot of times we don't even know where it is or where we are trying to go with it because it is not clearly defined. And that's why we keep hustling. Here's what I learned though, especially through the lens of grace, is that burnout isn't just about being tired, it's about being disconnected from who you are at a soul level. So it's not something where you can sleep it away or just change your nutrition away. It is an inner work, an inner healing that needs to be done in order to address why you're burnt out and how you got here in the first place. So these are the signs that I now look for, not just on the surface level, but the more deeper ones that are telling you that something's going on. And I'm also going to show you how to look at them through the lens of grace. So, number one, you just feel numb. You don't feel much of anything anymore. Just you're on autopilot. So you're just kind of going through your day without thinking about it. You get up, get dressed, go to work, come home, cook dinner, go back to bed, and start all over again, right? There's not a whole lot of interaction happening with your family. You're not enjoying yourself. You're probably not spending a whole lot of time with people that you care about because you're so focused on the thing that you're just moving, right? And so, grace, when you have awareness for that, says numbness is not normal. Your feelings are really just trying to guide you back home to yourself. So, when you start feeling that, just look at it as a sign that, okay, something is off here and it's trying to get me back to where I need to go. I'm going to share two more of these, but there's a whole list that we're going to go through in my upcoming workshop. If you want more details, I'm going to invite you to come at the end of this podcast episode and continue to explore these concepts. So, number two, your body is talking, but you are not listening. If you're experiencing headaches, your shoulders are tight, you're having stomach issues, you're experiencing vertigo, there are all of these signs that your body is waving a red flag at you and you keep hitting snooze. It's like the dashboard in your car keeps lighting up, but you're ignoring the fact that your tire has been flat for the past 10 miles. And so, looking at that through a lens of grace is not beating yourself up about it. It's telling you that this is not your body betraying you. This is it begging you for nurturing. So before you get to burnout, this is where you can start to begin to change those sleep habits, making sure that you're caught up on all of your yearly appointments, making sure that you are eating well. This is where you start to check those things before it gets out of hand. Number three, you can't remember the last time you felt like you. And I'll add to that, it's like you don't even really know who you are at this point. You've become the role that you play. So you're the boss, you're the mom, you're the strong one, you're the friend that's there for everybody else. But outside of that, it's really hard for you to pinpoint who you are and what it is that you like and love about yourself or what is fun for you to do, right? You just kind of moves those hobbies to the side um at the expense of really connecting and nurturing who you are like you may have done previously to, having a lot of responsibilities. And usually it just means that you are just feeling far away. So you can feel that distance growing. And so, again, that's where we utilize grace as a tool because grace says you are more than who you are for others and ask you to examine who you are for yourself. So let's talk about where this mindset has come from in the first place. I like to get to the root of things. I like to get down up under there because the hustle mentality, it didn't start with us. We inherited it. It was given to us. And it was given to us through this idea of capitalism. From the jump, we're taught that our worth equals productivity. So hustle is glamorized, overworking is normalized. Um, and for me, coming from an athletic background, right, that is ingrained in you in terms of, working hard. I'll get into that on a whole nother episode because if that's you, you know what I'm talking about. But there is some carryover that I have seen show up when working with athletes. And so I love to talk about that, but that's a whole nother a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But it just goes back to that thought pattern that grind now, shine later, sleep when you're dead, get rich or die trying. All of those things that are repetitively kind of taught and used as the pathway to success. And in those instances, rest doesn't create or is not conducive to profit, to making money. So the system discourages it. It's like, I don't want you to rest. I want you to be working 24/7. I want you to be thinking of the next thing, because then you become a cog in the wheel that keeps it going. And part of that comes from white supremacy and enslavement histories. And I'm learning more about this through Trisha Hersey of the NAP Ministry. She reminds us in reading Rest is Resistance that rest was violently denied to enslaved Africans, and our bodies were seen as machines, and that history still echoes that, especially for Black and Brown women. So when you are feeling guilty for resting, that is not random. That is a system that is trying to survive through us. And one of the ways they reinforce that system is through media and role models, right? This whole era that we're coming off of, with the girl boss who wakes up at 4 a.m., runs an empire, makes green juice, and just doesn't show a crack and is heavily praised for that. But we're coming back to an era where we want to celebrate your ambition, but we also want to celebrate the choosing of your healing, the choosing of your creativity and the space that you have to create for that, the choosing of your softness. So let me just offer you this truth. If that is something that you are struggling with, you are not lazy for resting. You are not broken if this idea of ease or even talking about it feels unnatural. You are not failing if you choose alignment over burnout, even if that means you have to slow down a little or the way that you do things look differently. You didn't make this mindset, you inherited it, but you have the option to lay it down. You have the option to say no more. And grace gives you permission to unlearn those lies and reclaim your power. Knowing that there is no perfect way to do it, it's about what works for you. So, yes, rest is resistance, but grace is the next level. Grace says you are worthy even when you are doing nothing. You are worthy even when you are doing nothing. This has been my mantra, because detaching your worth from doing work is work. And that idea of worthiness, even when you are doing nothing, if you take nothing else from this episode, if you just take that mantra and utilize it on a daily basis, I guarantee you that this time next month, if you do that for 21 days, your life will look differently. There may be grief associated with letting go, there may be sadness associated with just doing it a different way. But ultimately, the more you tell yourself that, the more it allows you to show up in a way that allows that gives you that space for grace, that allows you to grow without going overboard, without burning out. So let's talk about the alternative to the hustle mentality: flow, alignment, sustainable success. There came a moment for me where I had to ask myself, what if? What if I could do this differently? What would that look like? What if success didn't have to cost me my peace? What if I could build something meaningful and sustainable? And that's when I just started looking into this idea of flow. Flow isn't about being passive. It's not about sitting on your couch and hoping that God is just gonna, sprinkle his blessings in your lap. It's about working with your energy, not against it. Aligning your efforts with your values and what is important to you, and moving from force to faith. Knowing and operating in that knowing. My friend always says knowing is in the demonstration, meaning you can say that you know, but if you're not acting like that, you don't know. You're not operating in that knowing. You're not really sure about it. So I started redefining what success meant to me, not the metrics, not the money, not the titles, but how I felt in my body, how I woke up in the morning, whether my days had joy in it, whether or not I incorporated something fun for me, whether or not I spent intentional time with my family. And those are the things that ultimately you'll decide what that looks like for you. So here's my invitation to you. Let's shift. Here are a few check in questions that you can do to help you get there and help you decide. Where in your life or your business are you forcing things instead of just going with the flow? What energizes you? What drains you? And here's your grace led experiment for this week. Pick one area where you've been hustling or operating out of the hustle and ask yourself, how can I do this in a way that feels lighter? It might look like setting a boundary, delegating, taking a break without guilt, choosing done over perfect. Go on and send that email without reading it 50, 11 times. Choosing you over expectations, because hard work, let me back up. Hard work has its place. You're going to have to work, but suffering is not the ticket to your success. And there's a difference between the two. It's not about grinding, it's about aligning with your purpose, aligning with your current season of life, aligning with your peace. And today I'm inviting you to step away, take a step back from the hustle and into the flow, to give yourself the grace that you've been withholding in order to pay the price we've been told that we have to pay in order to be successful. I want you to reclaim ease not as a luxury, but as your birthright. Below, there's a link where you'll find information about the upcoming workshop. I hope to see you there. All the details are going to be in that link below. But we're going to continue to explore this topic in the workshop. You've got nothing to prove, just something beautiful to build on your own terms. So until next time, thank you for watching Society, the podcast, where we give women like you the tools to make their own rules.